traveled to 40 states and 40 countries. Um, but today I figured I'd start by talking a little bit about the current climate. As most people know and think, our country's never been more politically polarized. And I know I've said this before, in the information age, ignorance is a choice. And while it's never been easier to find information, unfortunately, I think people are likely to seek opinions that confirm their biases. It's far easier to confirm your biases and find information that supports your ideology, and it's very difficult and uncomfortable to seek opposing views. And I think most people are just frankly too lazy to do it. It's to put in the work. And the whole issue with masks during COVID, I think, is a good example of how stubborn and selfish people can be. So unfortunately, I'm not terribly hopeful that people will do the right thing for the sake of others. And frankly, that affects me deeply personally and professionally. I think Trump has an outsized influence on the current climate. As our Twitterer in chief, he's constantly adding fuel to the fire. I was saddened for America when he was elected president. I don't necessarily think that he made people more racist or less racist, but I think he exposed America for what we really are. And 46% of Americans still voted for him. He's empowered ignorant people to speak freely, which is a good and a bad thing. Personally, I like it when racists are open about their racism. It helps me quickly identify people to exclude from my life. But I know that's not realistic, and I have thick skin. Now, frankly, I'm depressed and enraged. Ukrainian aid being withheld doesn't move the needle in my life. Americans needlessly dying because of COVID and police brutality and some of these other things, I can't abide. So my worldview is, if you voted for Trump once, shame on you. If you vote for him twice, at the best, you're a very selfish person and probably a bad person. At the worst, you're a racist and fascist. Professionally, the current climate has both hurt and helped me. Coming into 2020, I expected a recession by 2021, which effectively hurt me. But the massive congressional and Federal Reserve stimulus have since helped me professionally, I think. Moving on to identity, I've always viewed myself as American first and Korean second. I don't have very strong connections to my Korean heritage. And while I've taken some of the good values from that culture, I don't speak the language and I'm not terribly well versed in the culture. I think the world, however, the world around me in America will always view me as an outsider. In some circles, I'm not American enough, and others, I'm not Asian enough. And for a long time, I think I probably hated that about myself, and that I didn't fit into the mold of what it means to be an American. I even subscribed to the idea that I needed to prove to white Americans that I was American enough. Toni Morrison wrote a beautiful book called Bluest Eyes. And I remember my mother telling me when I was 5, it was basically the same. I told her that I wish I had blonde hair and blue eyes. Now I frankly cherish the good values that I've taken from both cultures. And I think that's what ultimately being American is all about. We are founded on immigrants, after all. Now I also care much less about what others think about me, and I just try to live my best life. No matter how hard I try to prove my Americanness to those ignorant and hateful, they're still going to think that I'm different or less than. So why even bother trying to prove anything to them? Since March, I've been living in Tampa because of COVID. And while this county voted for Clinton, every surrounding county overwhelmingly voted for Trump. So I know I'm in Trump country, and I see the stickers and signs everywhere. And I've noticed that when I go running every day, maybe 20 to 30% of the white people will wave back to me when I wave to them. And in the slightly nicer part of town, it's much higher. But 100% of the people of color wave back. And that's something that I've expressed to my roommate, who I think personally is the definition of white male privilege, but doesn't see it that way. and it falls on deaf ears, which has been very frustrating for me as well. And granted, some people aren't friendly, so I give them some leeway, but I think I'm going to just keep trying to kill them with kindness. But for those who never wave back or will never be open to knowing me, I think it's their loss. I don't think I'm some special snowflake, but I think I'm worth knowing. And so for them, if they don't want to engage, it's their loss. And I hope people will be more open-minded, and I hope that I'm wrong on not being hopeful for a better America.